Tonight's Modern Men is powered by the Hero Initiative. Are you interested in becoming a hero? Go to heroinitiative.org and see how you can be a hero to comic creators in need. That's heroinitiative.org. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Modern Men. It's Monday, our kind of favorite day of the week, depending on... It's Monday. You, Garfield the cat, we love him. But anyway, happy to be here. Unfortunately, our friend JB Discovery Bay could not be with us. He's taking care of family, of course, because, you know, JB, he's a family man. But with us, oh my God, we got the beards back. Look at that majestic, fine mane with that nice, bright blue comb. Comic Man Andy, how you doing today? How's the beard?
I'm doing well. And the beard, we're going with the word biblical.
Oh my God, beard-blical. Sorry, I just made up that word. Drew, how you doing down there?
Oh, I got a case of the Mondays. Carson means I had the day off today. I'm going to be doing an auction later, which means the auction already happened when this thing premieres. Wow. But I'm very excited to get into our topic today, but more so to get into the book that we read, nice. Magic Order, Volume 1.
Oh, absolutely. So tonight, our plan here on Modern Men, we're going to go back to the movies, even though we're doing this, you know, the Shatter Kayfabe here, it's like noon Eastern, so we don't have any popcorn ready because I just ate lunch. But anyway, pretend like you're at the movies, and the Modern Men, we're going to the movies with you tonight. We're going to cover 2009 on up. We got a lot of interesting movies to cover. As I stated in part one, this kind of is truly the movie era we're in now. So you had this like nice start and resurgence with Blade through Iron Man and Dark Knight. And recently we had, you know, the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame and all that stuff and all the DC stuff. But right now we got to cover the middle of all this. So what are we going to unravel? We'll find out. But first, we got some business to conduct. So last week, Mylar glare there. Magic Order by Mark Millar has won the randomizer. So this is a book I got a chance to read as it was coming out. So actually, one of the rare times in Modern Men history, I just got a chance to go to the short boxes back there and pull out the whole run and read it from there. So we got Mark Millar. How do you pronounce this guy's name, Drew? I know you pronounced it last
I always say Millar. Oh, Olivier Coipel?
Olivier, yes. Olivier Coipel. I'm probably butchering that last name, but Oliver Coipel. I'm just going to stick with that. But anyway, some beautiful art. One of the best writers in the game. Andy, what are your initial thoughts on Magic Order?
Oh, man. I'm not the biggest fan of, like, the idea of magicians. I mean, or the idea of, like, stage magic. But this book hooks you within the first 3 pages. It really does. I went in this with some reservations. I ended up reading it on Comixology because when I went to my LCS and asked for the trade paperback, it's $20 from Image. I was kind of surprised. I was anticipating that $9.99 Image deal, but because it's not an ongoing series, it was $20. I went with the Comixology version first to see what I was getting myself into, and I was pleasantly surprised. I want to share this page, but I'm not going to because I don't want to ruin it. That first 3 pages hooks you hard, in my opinion. It hooked me really hard. The art was fantastic, in my opinion. The story flowed really well. I don't have a lot of experience reading Mark Millar stuff. That's going to change, though.
Nice.
It's seriously going to change. I love this. I really do. Sometimes I felt like it moved a lot faster than I wanted it to slow down a little bit at points and kind of delve a little deeper into it. But, man, it delivered, in my opinion.
Awesome. Drew, what say you?
I don't want to spoil the rest of this episode for everybody. I suggested this. I put it in the randomizer. Same with Oblivion song last week. Everything's coming up Manchu these days. You guys are just reading what I want you to read. And I read this again, and I had the exact same feeling the first time I read it. What a setup. What a premise. What fantastic characters, and what a botched ending. That's just all I had to say about it. We will get into things that I liked and I loved and things that I thought weren't so great about this. But this is typical Molar for me. It's a TV pitch. It's a movie pitch. And at the end of it, they try to turn it into something that can be an ongoing series when it doesn't need to be. So that said, I really enjoyed it. Just because the second half of the last issue wasn't what I wanted it to be. Doesn't take away how great the first 5.5 issues were. So, yeah, Magic Order, great. It's like Tarantino meets Harry Potter.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that first couple of pages in says Netflix right at the bottom. I was kind of surprised to see that already on there.
Well, this was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah. I believe so.
This was the first Netflix branded comic after Netflix purchased, I believe they purchased the Millarverse in whole, right? So they're producing the comics as well?
Yeah, they basically, Netflix did their purchase of Millar World, which is, pretty much all of his properties that he owns and is slowly creating, like Magic Order. I think Kick-Ass and Hit Girl are lumped in there now. Sharky the Bounty Hunter, several other ones. That's why all of a sudden, like Reborn, of course. Once you actually, I think Reborn was the first Netflix inspired one.
Maybe it was.
I think was the second. But all of a sudden, once this Millar World Netflix deal went down, all of a sudden you saw all these Mark Millar properties about intervals of like 5 and 6 issues just slam the local shops, which I think is a good thing because I don't know if he was saving up some of these premises and ideas, but he, at least like in the last couple of years, he's had this hot streak of just good like first runs of everything. Like I legitimately enjoyed Reborn. Sharky wasn't too bad. Prodigy, another good one that he's done recently. And of course, I think honestly, out of all those, the one that stands the tallest for me is honestly Magic Order. So that's why I was thrilled to reread this. I read all 6 issues as they came out on the shelves. It follows the Moonstone family, as you see here. They're basically being targeted by an evil group of magicians. And it just takes off from there. It's a simple premise, but Olivier, however you want to pronounce it, he does a masterful job of making this book look as cinematic as possible, in my opinion. So you could definitely tell they made a point. Let me click on Drew's screen there. They made oh yeah, look at that. That was going to be my pick for panel of the week too. But they kind of made this point. It's made for Netflix. I think they're thinking long run TV and or movie. They wanted to get those big scenes as cinematic as possible. And Oliver Coipel is definitely very strong at doing that, just like Greg Capullo was in Reborn and so on and so forth. But I absolutely love the Moonstone family. So, Andy, did you have a favorite character in this book?
I didn't. This is one of those ones where I think I read quite differently from a lot of other people. I breezed through this in about an hour and a half and wanted more, but then when I tried to think back a bit, it just didn't sink in super fast for me. Sure. So, I mean, I got to reread this a couple more times. The brother that got out, I like the names. I'm still struggling to remember the names. The brother that got out that was trying to live a normal life without spoiling the story too much was my favorite character.
Oh, I'm going to spoil it hardcore, so you can go ahead and spoil it right away.
For the first half of the book, I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. And then the second half of the book, I was like, oh, man. But yeah, they're what? Fifth,
Gabriel?
Seventh, yeah, 5th, 6th, 7th generation magicians, and all of the children being born all share those abilities, and they're thrust into this as they grow up and become adults. That was kind of neat. And it's kind of like the trials and tribulations. You saw both sides of that coin where some didn't want to deal with it, and others did. Too much to a fault.
For me, I was going to say, I think my favorite character had to be Cordelia Moonstone. I feel like the book, not so much early on, but the second half of the whole book, especially once you get into, they kind of like show her origin, then she takes a back seat for a second, but then the whole second half's about her. But Cordelia, for me, she definitely made this book her own toward the end, basically. I just like the part where, they're going through her origin, and she's talking about like, oh, my life has been messed up since, my mother tried to abort me, and then I escaped my own abortion, And then it turns out she's at a children's magic show and the cops have been called. So definitely a laugh out loud moment for sure for me. So that was also probably my favorite part. Just that opening, I think of it was issue 2 or 3. What about you, Drew?
I love Cordelia, and I love her from the moment, like the opening of this book, right, is 2 evil magicians puppeteer a small child to go in and murder his parents while they're making the whoopee, right?
Yep.
So then after that, I'm like, how does this book ramp up from there? Well, the next scene is just a really great character scene with Cordelia. She's arrested in the back of a police car. They're like, how do you get arrested at a 5-year-old's birthday party? And she says, well, I guess it all took a turn for the worse when the mother caught me fucking her husband in the kitchen. So, and she's an escape artist. So after she's telling this story, and then they look in the rear view mirror, and then she's a pair of handcuffs sitting on the seat. She's gone.
Notice if you look further back in that panel, they're actually, if you look through the window back behind her, she's climbing over the barricade in the middle of the median of the highway, out of the car, gone, and like leaving. And they're like, what? But I mean, like, let's see if I can show this without showing any of the nudity, because there is nudity in this.
Yep.
There's a lot of nudity in this.
I have a child at home about this size. So for me, that part was a little more frightening than I'd like to remember.
Oh, yeah.
That little kid climbing onto the bed. Oh, boy. Yeah, because I've seen that scene where the little kid's climbing on the bed and then he jumps you and just lands right square on your guys.
I think my other kind of cool favorite part in this was there's one issue that starts off at the opening of World War II, and, you know, America's actually losing World War II, it turns out. So they basically go to the Magic Order to help out with World War II, and they're kind of describing why they haven't helped out yet. It's like, well, we're actually fighting this war on several planes. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then somehow, like, Cordelia as a kid time travels back just to say hi to her dad who was helping with that fight. So I thought that was a pretty cool scene. So I think if they did a sequel to Magic Order, which it says to be continued at the end of issue 6, I guess they do like a volume 2 like Mark Millar kind of does nowadays. I wouldn't mind seeing more from that era of the Magic Order to see exactly what they did to turn the tide in World War II.
Okay, so I haven't dipped into it quite yet, but this is the only book for this series that's out, right?
Yes.
Okay. Dang. I was hoping to read more. One of my favorite parts was the end of book 1, where they're doing that. They're hunting down the magicians, and there's that transference spell going on in the apartment. And then eventually, by the end of the book, the people have faded away. That apartment world has faded away into 2 completely different individuals, and it's just the world's flip-flopped. And those people have been erased, if I read that correctly.
Kind of like a pocket dimension kind of traffic.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, that magician that was there, that was helping, working to assist that older lady, he's gone. Done.
Oh, and another one of my favorite parts is like toward I think it was issue 5 and 6, where they're finally making their final move to eradicate the Magic Order. They go see that uncle in this castle who's stranded away with that, you know, basically like for you Charmed fans out there, it's like their Book of Shadows, basically. And the guys, they just send one guy because they think he's like scared and hiding away from the rest of the world. But it turns out their uncle is such a dangerous magician. They built this castle to contain him from the rest of the world. He states that, you know why Egypt's a desert is because I visited there. And he just like liquefies this guy. And then like next time you see him, he's just like sitting Indian style in a pool of blood. Like he's just like, yep, I took care of it.
And that was a really neat part too with the castle. The only way to access this castle, because it was hidden within a painting, within a different realm or different dimension, and you had to have an invite or thinker. You had to be on a list to even go there or get through that painting. But you'd see the character walk up to the painting, looking at it, smoking a cigarette, and he just walks through the painting and walks right into the castle.
That's Mario 64 technology there.
Yeah. Wahoo! Yeah, I'm a big fan of a lot of concepts in this book. I love how sexy this book is. I love how violent this book is. And there's just a lot of really cool magic concepts that are laid out throughout. The whole crux of the story is that Albany and this dark order of magicians Shit, I just fucked my shit up.
You sound fine.
Oh yeah, I just pulled my headphones out and it freaked me out. So this Dark Order of Magicians is attacking this family, and you really don't even know why for the majority sake of this book.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know why they're being taken out. And then you find out it's an inside job, which I absolutely love that part of the story.
Just sadistic.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just a great book, man. The art conveys the mood perfectly from page to page, panel to panel. The story is easy to follow. It's well laid out. It's really well written, especially dialogue wise. People talk naturally. It's not exposition heavy. It's going to show you something and allow you to react to it as the characters react to it. I really love that. This story, though, falls apart at the very, very end of it in order to turn what could have been one of the better books of the decade into a possible ongoing series that we've heard absolutely nothing about this continuing. To spoil the story a little bit, Gabriel's daughter dies, right? She picks up his magic wand, tries to use it, and ends up killing herself. This is backstory. And his family refuses to do the taboo things that are necessary to bring her back. So he turns on his family, and he gets these dark magicians. They promise if he helps them take out his family, they'll bring his daughter back. So at the end of this book, Cordelia ends up doing all the things that the family wouldn't do in the first place that caused this situation in order to give the book a happy ending. And I'm like, it's like the last 5 pages. I'm like, why'd they do this? Was anybody else frustrated with the ending of this book?
Yep.
I wasn't at all. You nihilists. But anyway, I actually really dug the end of the book where I'm just like, what is she gonna do to like you saw her father, who's considered like one of the most like premier, most powerful magicians, just get annihilated. And that's like the halfway point of this whole run is basically Gabriel in disguise takes out his father. Like you see his arm get ripped off, and then he gets liquefied in our panel of the week that you showed earlier. And I'm just like, how is Cordelia gonna like fight this entire Dark Order, including her brother, who's probably equally, if not maybe a little bit more powerful than she's supposed to be? And, she basically cheats to win. She's memorized this, like, the family book. She uses a resurrection spell. The only thing I kind of didn't like about it is they didn't do the greatest job explaining how the resurrection spell sacrifice worked. Because the Dark Order just stand there, it's like, isn't there supposed to be a sacrifice that brings back people from the dead? And there's like, oh yeah, the sacrifice, and they just point their wands, and the Dark Order's the sacrifice. So I guess it goes both ways. Like you could just do any step you want.
Here's my deal with it though. Is I enjoyed it, and I thought that the ending action sequence was great. I thought that the dialogue was great. I just don't understand like the whole deal. The whole reason this story takes place, the whole reason this guy sells his family out to be murdered is because they won't make a sacrifice to bring back his little girl. But when her life is threatened, she brings back the entire family, everybody, except for the little girl who she waits to bring back until the only guy who wants to spend any time with this kid is the sacrifice to bring her back. It's the dumbest thing.
I'm completely with Drew on this.
It like for me, that ending is going to take at least a point off my score. So take that into consideration. It's a really good book. It's a really good read. It grabs you from the moment that you start reading it, and it takes you all the way through the end. But for me, it was just like it did not stick the landing. It's a perfect gymnastics display, and then when she does that triple flippy spin thing at the end and she sticks the landing but her foot breaks off, that's what this book is to me. It's like, oh man, now I can't watch it.
you know, and they talk about how Gabriel's father is like the premier magician. Like this is the top of the line. Then they discuss how Gabriel is supposedly has surpassed his father exponentially, and how much better he is, but he's trying to live a regular life. And that brings me to one of my favorite parts of the book is when they go to pick up Angus and they go to interrogate him to find out where the hideout is. And they actually pull a book out, whack him on top of the head, and then all of a sudden they're in Robinson Crusoe's beach and they leave him stranded. And they come back whatever minutes later and he's like, I've been here 15 years, and he's like half dead. And then they strand him in another book later where he's getting all chopped up. Island of Dr. Moreau is just, that was super cool. And because it gave some insight into how just immensely powerful he was to make that happen, to interrogate that guy right there and then. And then I'm with Drew on this. From that point on, like that masterful gymnastics started to slowly, all of a sudden, bam, at the end, fall apart. So I'm with Drew on that.
I think that they tried to set it up to give you another book, right? And they could totally have done Magic Order Volume 2 and flashbacks of stories before this, right?
Yeah.
There's the World War II stuff you were talking about, Seawood, where the magic is influencing history. I want to see more of that.
Yeah, me too.
Right?
I think that'd be a phenomenal way to do Volume 2.
Right. And you don't need to bring all these characters back. You can totally use different characters. You can show these characters from another angle. I think that I'm basically in a book that explains so much about the magic and how it works and what happens here. And there's sacrifice for this and blah, blah. At the end, everything's resolved with a Alakazam. It's like she waves her hands and then everything gets better, right? Right. And for as masterfully as this was built, to have it resolved so quickly for me was just like, man, it left a bad taste in my mouth. But I still enjoyed this book overall, hence why I added it to the randomizer.
All right.
That last line: a good magician always has a trick up her sleeve. That was the end trick.
Yeah. I'm ready to hear some scores. So, Drew, you seem eager to score this one. What's your overall score here?
8.0. We're leaving 1 point off. I think it's a 9.0 book, but the ending was just not great. But 8.0.
Andy?
I'm 8.5. I would have been, 9.6 or so had it not ended that way. I'm with Drew on that. So I'm going to add an 8.5.
I think I'm going to have to go 9.0 on this. The only reason I'm putting it 9.0 is just because at the end of the day, I wanted a little bit more after I read it. And we're eventually going to get more, but I mean, some of the issues just felt like I could read them in a few minutes. But I think overall, this is my second time reading it. The first time I read it, obviously, is month by month or whatever the release schedule was. This is the first time I've got a chance to really sit down and read all 6 issues together. So it read extremely well as a 6-issue arc at the same time. It was about a 1-hour read total. I enjoyed it from start to finish, including the finish. So if you guys have any suggestions for what you want us to review next, definitely put them in the comments below. We're going to try something new out at the end of this episode using our community tab. So stay tuned for details on that. But without further ado, I hope my list is still up and active, and thank God it is. We're going to go back to the movies because last time it was a supersized episode. I think it was episode 9 of Modern Men. We covered 1998 through 2008, and I felt like it was 2021 by the time we got done with that video. We covered so many movies, so we're just going to kind of rapid fire movies for the next half an hour for your enjoyment, basically, and see how far we get. So we're going to dive right into 2009 to start off our list of movies tonight. And this one's kind of a coincidence because on episode 19 of Modern Men, a couple episodes back, we just talked about the comic book. Now we get a chance to talk a little bit about the movie real quick. So we're starting tonight with Watchmen. So Drew, what'd you think of the Watchmen movie?
The Watchmen movie, I very much enjoyed. Very much enjoyed it. I think that the things they changed from the book were not huge departures. I think that on subsequent DVD releases, we've gotten more material that ties everything together in a really nice way, the way that the Watchmen book has multiple things going on. The casting was great. The special effects were good. Zack Snyder got to flex his muscle on the slow-mo action sequences, which when you think of Watchmen, action isn't the first thing you think of. And I think that maybe people who were going into this movie looking for a comic book movie may have been disappointed. But I think that it's a panel for panel recreation in some scenes that stands on its own. I know a lot of people have watched the Watchmen movie before they read the book, but I would not suggest doing that, even though they are two totally different experiences. But Watchmen, man, that's an A+ movie. Every time it's on, I watch it, which means every time it shows up on TV, I lose 3.5 hours of my life.
Yeah, for me, I remember like when Dark Knight came out, I was just like, this movie is phenomenal. People are taking comic book movies really seriously now. I think it's maybe finally time for a Watchmen movie because they announced it, and obviously it was scheduled for 2009 for a while back in the day. And I went and saw this movie, and I was just like kind of surprised. There weren't that many people sitting in the movie theater when I went and saw this. Not only that, I actually saw people leaving around the 2-hour mark. So, yeah, I think you're dead on the money where people went and saw this expecting kind of like, you know, your popcorn style action comic book movie, kind of like, you know, your X-Men's, Daredevils, what have you were kind of at the time. And they got something they weren't quite expecting still, the people who weren't familiar with the source material. But honestly, I think it lives up to the source material as much as a movie could, to be honest. The ending for me, I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, slam it or go into how bad it was, like a lot of other people have stated many times over the last decade plus. I thought, you know, they tried something different, and it was what it was. But overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I thought they did a great job. I think that's Zack Snyder's strength a lot of times is taking, like, you know, a comic book and delivering the panel to screen action so well. Like, you could just look or pause frames of his movies and like, yep, that's a comic book panel right there. Just like he did with Batman and 300. He does it here as well. And then the casting, I think, was really good in this movie too. Especially with, you know, Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach. You could tell he was a fan of the comic since it's probably came out. Like, he did a phenomenal job. Andy, have you had a chance to watch Watchmen yet?
I have not. You guys are gonna hate me for this.
Oh, no worries.
It's on the DVR. It shows up on a lot of different channels, so we were able to DVR it. This time frame, this 2009, 2013 time frame, I had such a busy life that we weren't seeing a lot of movies. So we're still going back. We went and saw some of the core ones, but Watchmen's one of the ones we didn't see. I've seen some clips when you're flipping through channels and whatnot, or bits and pieces here and there. And I will say I'm amazed. Like, you bring up panel for panel. There's a couple of those panels in the first issue or two of the comic book, and I'm like, this is on the channel right now. I'm like, holy cow, that's so panel for panel. I'm like, I gotta see this. So we've got a DVR. I gotta make time to watch it. I'm really looking forward to it.
I think it's masterful the way he worked a lot of yellow, purple, and pink like lights and hues and just reflections and things into the way this was shot, which really conveys the coloring of the book that you just don't expect. That level of detail you don't expect. And I have a lot of questions as to why they thought that everything else in Watchmen would work except for the giant squid monster. And that's the thing they cut out. Like, oh, okay, everything else is cool. Like, giant floppy blue dong just walking around outside of time and space is fine, but people won't get a squid monster. You know, that to me was questionable. I think they should have just gone with the squid monster. I think it worked really well in the HBO series that they went with the squid monster. But, you know, it is what it is. You know, you take what you can get, and that's a pretty great, faithful adaptation of one of the books of our time that we were all told forever and ever, you can't adapt it.
I'm surprised with how much has happened with Watchmen as far as the movie, the TV series, and whatnot. That book is critically acclaimed as it is. is still quite affordable when you compare it to some of the Marvel stuff. The Marvel movies shoot the books to the stratosphere to some point. Watchmen is still incredibly affordable, in my opinion, in high grade.
You're not wrong, but I hope you see that movie one day, Andy. But here's one movie I hope you never see: X-Men Origins Wolverine.
No, I saw it. I saw it.
Oh no, you want to talk about it real quick?
It was all right. It wasn't great, but it was okay. That was a grab the popcorn, grab the soda, hang out for a little bit, and at the end, I'm like, oh, okay. I watched it, had some popcorn, had some pop, and I left it at that. It wasn't great, but it wasn't dumpster material either. It was just so blasé, kind of middle of the road for me.
I completely disagree. I don't think it's middle of the road at all. I think that the best parts about this movie are some of the best comic book movie parts that we've gotten in movie history. I think that the worst parts of this movie are some of the worst things that we've gotten in comic book movie history. This movie was rushed. The CG was not finished. You can tell in some scenes it's just not finished. The script was butchered. If you want to get a good feeling of what X-Men Origins Wolverine should have been like, play the video game. Right?
Oh yeah,
the video game's great. It's a God of War clone where like you get shot up as Wolverine, and then like as you heal, your bones and like the musculature grows back on the bones and the skin grows back. It's a really good game. And there's Mystique in here. There's the origin of Nightcrawler in here. There's the Sentinels and Trask and all these things that got cut from X-Men Origins for cost reasons. And when you think of how bad they screwed the pooch on Deadpool, that's the end of the movie. And that's where most people end their remembrance of this movie. But I remember a young Cyclops. I remember Professor Xavier, having these people, calling them at the end to form the X-Men. I remember the timeline of it working out really well. I remember really liking Ray Donovan, what's his name? Liev Schreiber, as Creed. Now, should he have had way more makeup and more CG to make him Sabretooth? Sure, I agree with that. But character-wise, I think he nailed it. I think that the beginning of this movie where they're flashing back and forth through all the timelines where they were soldiers and the beginning where Ryan Reynolds shows up as Wade before he gets all screwed up, that was great. Like the whole beginning of this movie was fantastic. And they kind of even tie it to an African meteorite taking the metal for the adamantium, which is vibranium basically. Yeah. So it's all tied together comic wise. The Blob fight in the ring where he's just lazy, so he got fat. His natural ability to absorb energy has nothing to do with him being fat. He just got fat. That was fun. I enjoyed this movie in a lot of ways. The scene where he launches himself at the helicopter and takes it out, that's good. There's just so much drivel and garbage in between, and it just didn't come together into a movie worth sitting down and watching more than once.
See, that's where for me the ups and the downs just ended up blending and balancing it for me, where you have a much better ability to reaccount the detail and the connections. Whereas me, it's like I might have to go back and watch it 10 times to get to the level that you're at. You know what I mean?
I just remember that. I mean, what's his name was Gambit.
Oh, God.
Tim Riggins. You all know how much anybody who's watched Outside the Issues on this channel, gone too soon outside the issues, it knows how much I love me some Tim Riggins.
Oh, yeah. Until you just said Tim Riggins, I kind of forgot Gambit was even in this movie. I'll be honest.
It's worth forgetting.
It is. Like, let's make a movie based on that guy, and then they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, it took place in the '80s." We messed that one up. But anyway, I saw this movie in theaters when it came out. I don't think I've wanted to watch it since. Like, I just remember my buddy who was a huge X-Men movie fan. He was one of the guys who was excited that it leaked online and that stuff, and he's just like, I couldn't watch any more of it because it was ruining it for me. So I'm just gonna go see it in a theater. And he's like, oh my god, this movie is actually as bad as the leak. Like, people thought that wasn't the finished version of the movie, which it wasn't. They still had CG to put in, but they thought there was gonna be more put in, and it was a mess. However, I agree with Liev Schreiber. He kind of stole this movie, kind of like Kelsey Grammer stole X-Men 3 with Beast. It's a shame he wasn't cast to begin with as Sabretooth. There would have been such a more cool build between Logan and Sabretooth had Liev Schreiber been cast from the beginning in the first X-Men movie instead of what's his name, who ended up being Michael Myers later down the line. But yeah, Liev Schreiber, great call on that casting. But other than that, like I said, just the CG was really bad. The action scene, especially just the whole ending action scene, just did nothing at all for me. And the less said about this movie, the better, in my opinion. All right, so we're going to move on to 2010. There's one I haven't seen. Maybe you have, Drew. The Losers. Jock and Andy Diggle.
I have seen the Losers. I don't remember that much about it. It was like one of those, A-team shoot 'em up style movies. I remember there's a lot of cool action sequences, but I don't remember this movie. That's not
Andy. Andy shaking his head. No, we'll move on to Kick-Ass.
I had to Google it to even figure anything. Yeah, I had no idea that came out.
Chloe Grace Moretz in Kick-Ass has the single greatest scene in comic book movie history where Hit Girl just comes in and absolutely destroys everybody set to poppy music, and it's phenomenal. If you don't have the time or the urge to see this movie, just Google that scene and watch that video on YouTube. It's just absolutely great. Kick-Ass has its ups and its downs. I think it's a very faithful adaptation. I think it does what it's supposed to do very, very well. And it left me really excited to see the sequel.
Yeah, absolutely. A career-making performance for Chloe Grace Moretz in this one. I actually got to go to like a premiere of this movie in Chicago because it was like around. Actually, I think they timed this movie around the first C2E2 ever. So me and my brother went to C2E2, and that Thursday they actually had like a screening where the actors were supposed. Actually, I think they did have the two main actors were there for like a post-movie Q&A, and it was actually pretty cool. But yeah, this movie definitely lived up to the comic. I think it's one of the strongest Mark Millar properties that he's created. And I think people, if they haven't seen it, should go out of their way to check out the first Kick-Ass.
Yeah, and like you get to watch Nicolas Cage act like he's on fire and actually be on fire.
Oh, I think you sold me. I think that's one of the reasons why I never watched it, is it had Nicolas Cage's name on it.
Oh, but, you watch that movie, you'll be like, why are they putting anybody else in the Batman costume besides Nicolas Cage?
Wow.
All right. I wish for this next one I had like a Pokeball or a summon from Final Fantasy I could just throw and cast a quick Great Legend appearance. So we could just talk terrible about this movie. But the next one on the list is Jonah Hex.
Ooh.
I have never seen this movie.
I will never see this movie.
I've never seen it either. So there's literally
let's move on.
Yeah, Josh Brolin has gone too soon in that one. So yeah, I've heard nothing but bad things. So we're skipping to a movie that people actually like and enjoyed for the most part. Iron Man 2. So this is around the time where the Disney Studios and the company, they were finally starting to get their act together. Like, well, Iron Man was a huge hit. Incredible Hulk was a huge hit. What if we take Thor and Cap, make their own movie, give Iron Man a sequel, then pair them all together going down the line? So this is kind of like they planted the first seed in Iron Man, but this is the one where you really started to see the seed sprout here. So what do you think of Iron Man 2, Drew?
I loved so much about this movie and the way that it world builds for the MCU. I will say that this is the weakest entry in the MCU movies. The weakest, by far. We're going to talk about a movie here, if we get to it, that people love to hate on. You told me is the last movie on this list that you pulled up today. I don't think that has nearly as many problems as this one does. You do get Scarlett Johansson. You did get more S.H.I.E.L.D. involvement. You do get, Hammer Industry. You get Don Cheadle in as the new Rhodey, which I think was a vast improvement over Terrence Howard. But and you get, I mean, Sam Rockwell is phenomenal in this movie. That being said, Whiplash's portrayal by Mickey Rourke is horrible. It's awful. You can never understand what he's saying. The choices he makes are all over the place, and I feel like the director was just like not interested in reining him in. And there's just a lot of fluff and nonsense in this movie. It just doesn't flow very well. That's what I'll say about it.
Yeah,
So,
I wish Mickey Rourke, we could have seen him as Omega Red.
I wish Mickey Rourke would just only play Marv.
Yeah.
Like and stop. Like, the resurgence of Mickey Rourke has only served to hurt the brand of Mickey Rourke. Like, less Mickey Rourke is probably better. He can just show up at award shows and be a Axl Rose lookalike. They can both look like over the hill grandmas with too much Botox.
I'll disagree with you on that, Drew. Not from an acting or a skills standpoint. I kind of enjoyed his portrayal in that movie. Yeah, granted, I do see your point, and I don't disagree with your points, but I enjoyed it at least. I guess I'm just kind of muddled.
I think that the villainy in that movie was totally lopsided, right? When the compelling and interesting villain and the good story is the Justin Hammer part, and they decided to build it around Whiplash instead, and that story has like no heart to it, really. Like, oh, his father helped create the first arc reactor, blah blah blah. He feels like he was ripped off. None of that conveys emotionally through this movie. Like, you don't care about his dead Russian daddy. Like, I make that a t-shirt. I don't care about your dead Russian daddy. # Drew Manchu. It's just, there's so much about it that doesn't work but the CG was a step up from Iron Man. And that the budget that they got from Disney to work on this was a little bit higher, and that shone through. It's a beautiful movie. You get Scarlett Johansson, again, a beautiful movie, and you get a little expansion on what's going on in the universe. But beyond that, I think that this one was kind of the unneeded step between Iron Man and the Avengers.
Yeah, for me, I felt like this is like the biggest style of flaw in the MCU, the way it's set up. Sometimes there's just a couple movies in their lineup that feel like they put this movie out to hype up the next movie instead of just focusing on making a good movie. And I think that's where this movie gets exposed pretty much. Like, they put this one out just to keep, Robert Downey Jr. in the fold, keep him fresh in people's minds. So when he shows up in Avengers, you'll remember, like, oh yeah, he's from Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2. And of course they had to have the post-credit where he finds the Cap shield or what have you, and they hype up the Avengers Initiative and so on and so forth. But yeah, actually, this kind of hurts me to say I completely agree with Drew on every point about Iron Man 2. I didn't really care for Whiplash. We needed more Justin Hammer, in my opinion, less of Whiplash. Don Cheadle is excellent. I'm glad they just decided to make that casting choice early and got that switch out of the way, get Terrence Howard out. Because apparently Terrence Howard made more than Robert Downey Jr. did on the first Iron Man because of egos and such. So
hey, he thinks he's a star. Have fun on TV, yeah. Terrence Howard.
So, and then of course,
network TV, Terrence Howard.
Yeah. So overall, it's an okay movie. I mean, if you're an MCU completionist, absolutely go watch it. But it's definitely one of those like stream it, don't pay too much to go watch it. The next
Disney Plus.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get Disney Plus. Next one, I believe this was a Warren Ellis tale that I have not read. Red, starring Bruce Willis.
Fun film.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like let's get the band back together. Well, who's the band? That's a bunch of assassins and soldiers. Well, how is this interesting? Oh, they're all over the hill. Oh, that's great. It's like grumpy old men meets a comic book shoot 'em up, and it's a fun movie, man. It's nice to see some of these actors poke fun at their age, especially when a lot of these folks were action heroes kind of still at the time. And it's like one of those first movies where Bruce Willis is like, yeah, I'm old. Like, Yeah, dude, we've noticed. It's nice of you to be on the same page. But Red was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm with Drew on it being a really fun movie. And when I watched it at the time, I had no idea that it was based on a comic book or a graphic novel. None whatsoever. It wasn't until after the fact that I figured that out.
Yeah, I never read the book.
Here's one I decided to skip as soon as I heard about it. The Green Hornet starring Seth Rogen.
I did not see this movie.
Yeah, it was an instant pass for me. What about you, Andy? Did you give Green Hornet the time of day?
No.
The car looks badass.
I want to now just to see what is it about, but yeah.
The one thing I will say for Seth Rogen is he is a gigantic comic book fan.
Right? I can't get that laugh out of my head now. Thanks.
He's a huge fan. His production company has brought us things like The Boys and Preacher, and he really wanted to be in one of these movies. He lost a lot of weight. He got in good shape, right? Green Hornet, man, that Kato, everybody remembers that. Well, the problem is nobody remembers it. It's a dead property. There are Green Hornet fans out there. They are few and far between. This movie did not bring in the teenagers that hang out in the comic book shop. This movie did not bring in MCU fans, and it had no hope of doing so because the Green Hornet was a TV show. It's been a comic book from Dynamite's publishing that. But it's not a property that has legs, in my opinion, and was a poor choice for them production wise. But hey, is it a quality adaptation? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the source material. It didn't get me excited. Put Seth Rogen in the role of the hero. I'm not super excited for this movie, but I will say everything I saw production wise about that car and the images of the car were pretty damn good.
All right, so for this next one, we got a timer up on our left-hand corner here. You can see that timer there. So we're going to be able to count down 60 seconds, Drew. So for this next one, I'm only giving you 60 seconds. Green Lantern, go.
Green Lantern is better than you remember it. Green Lantern is very loyal to the two stories that the majority of the people know about the Green Lantern. It uses the origin story to set up a sequel with the Jeff Johns run of the Spectrum Wars and all that stuff. All that's coming in the sequel that they never got. It's not super goofy the way that you remember it. Kilowog is a quality representation from the comics. Sinestro is a quality representation from the comics. Does the suit just kind of appear on him in CG? Yeah. Is that kind of dumb? Yeah. As the CG not up to snuff? Yeah, sure. That's fine. Better than Wonder Woman. Better than Batman v Superman, better than Justice League. This is one of the top tier DC movies. If you're a DC fan, you should enjoy it. If you don't, I don't understand why.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard Drew spit game that good about anything DC related before.
That's why Carson took his earbuds on. Yeah. He, like, he heard me talk about it for about 20 minutes last night on an off-air call.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was like, I'll give you 60 seconds. I guess I'll give my 60 seconds. I hated this movie. I love the Jeff Johns Green Lantern run. I think this movie exposes DC's Warner Brothers cinematic masterpiece the way they can always do it, because they'll start a production. They always have this like big master plan, and then they try to like crap out 10 master plans, and it's just a convoluted mess as the final execution. It's kind of like what they did with Man of Steel. It's definitely what they did with Batman versus Superman. It's just you take a plan, you have a point A, you have a point B, and you have all these trip mines and traps to get the point B, and by the time you even get there, you don't care anymore. It was a mess. Ryan Reynolds was terrible. I enjoyed the Oa stuff. Michael Clark Duncan was phenomenal. I like Sinestro, but they rushed that storyline way too much. We didn't need the post-credits with the Sinestro Corps War tease, because we'll never see that movie, and thank God they'd ruin that anyway. All right, Andy, any thoughts?
Absolutely none.
All right.
So that's the way we like you.
Oh, jeez. We're going to move on to another solid movie, in my opinion, of an underrated movie, X-Men First Class.
I got a lot of problems with this movie.
Of course.
I'm
Go ahead.
surprised you let off with that then, because I've not heard good things to the point where I never watched it, never bothered.
Drew,
I
you
could
go
watch
first.
Fassbender read the phone book as Magneto. I think he's phenomenal. I think Jennifer Lawrence was at her best in this film. Darwin, no, get him out of here. Don't put him in there. Beast builds Cerebro. I'm sorry, that's stupid. The timeline issues with Havoc being 40 years older than his older brother Cyclops, that is just like, just pick another character. I don't have a problem with the way that this movie is structured. I don't have a problem with Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw, which I think was really great. I don't have a problem with this leading up to how Xavier got paralyzed by being shot in the spine. I think that the third act of this movie is phenomenal. I think that the first act of this movie just took forever to get going. I think that they chose the wrong cast of characters to build this first class team. And it was the first time that you were like, okay, none of this timeline works anymore. As much as I enjoy the look of this movie, the flow of this movie, the action in this movie, and some of the great portrayals in this movie, this is the first time when Fox was like, well, we'll go and do a prequel, and then immediately screwed up continuity. Immediately, like irreparably. So everything that happened after that in the X-Men universe doesn't make any sense. And it's this movie's fault.
I disagree with that. I think, it's kind of like if you're given a homework assignment, but you have to follow up these other two Nimrods who just completely messed everything up. So you had X-Men 3, terrible. You had Wolverine Origins, even worse. So to follow those two movies up, and here's your homework
I thought
assignment.
Origins was better than X3.
Make a prequel to this, this trash. I think he actually did a pretty good job. Like you get a cool like Cold War Cuban Missile Crisis thriller. I thought Fassbender was excellent in this. I think it was by far his best performance as Magneto by far. He kind of has this like James Bond-esque like way that he operates. He goes alone. He definitely looks the part of Magneto toward later in the movie. I actually really enjoyed Kevin Bacon and Sebastian Shaw in this. I think he did a pretty good job for being, not even really in Hollywood anymore. They just kind of like resurfaced him for this movie. The only person I didn't really like at all in this movie, casting wise, was January Jones as Emma Frost. Just
here's the thing, Carson. I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you to totally support January Jones in any endeavor where she wants to stand around wearing white lingerie and let me look at her. Man, is she a terrible actress?
Yes.
But I mean, there's something to be said for how that lady looks in white lingerie.
Yeah, looks good. She could have been replaced with a cardboard cutout of herself. But anyway,
I'm down for that too.
I was kind of sad my boy Darwin actually got killed off early. Somebody had to do the job though to kind of get the X-Men off their butts. Unfortunately, some people, like you just said, Drew, were kind of critical of the choices of the X-Men in this. But unfortunately, they used up most of your A-list X-Men prior to this movie, so they're only left with scraps kind of. But for me, the true story of this movie is the relationship building between Xavier and Magneto, and that's what this movie excels in the strongest. Andy, you said you didn't see this one, did you?
Nope.
It's just a flashback bromance between Mags and Proof.
Let's go back to the MCU for a little bit. We're going to talk about Thor. Andy, have you seen Thor?
Yes. Yeah, we did see Thor. And, I was not a big Thor reader growing up, and I still haven't gone back and read a lot of that. So I don't have a grasp of the source material. At face value, we really enjoyed the movies. I really like Anthony Hopkins in his role. I really like Chris Hemsworth. I did not care for Natalie Portman. Still don't.
I'm going to interrupt you now and talk about how beautiful Natalie Portman is. No.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. But I don't think she has a place, but they're stuck with her throughout these movies. Does she act okay? Yeah. It's just, I don't see her as being in that role, but then they're stuck with it. They're stuck with it for the whole time. That's probably one of the few comic book movies that our household watches regularly. That series, the Thor series. It's to the point where it's on in the background when we're doing a lot of other stuff because it's almost always on now. TNT, a lot of those other channels. It's just you get weekends where they're running the whole series.
I thoroughly enjoyed Thor. It's a great fish out of water story, and while I felt like they dropped the ball a lot on the world building of Thor, which they picked up a great deal in the sequels, they gave you a really great action comedy that's character driven. It's, you get to see these characters interact in a way that's really natural. I loved Natalie Portman in her role. I think Kat Dennings was hilarious in this movie, and they brought her in. What's that face for?
The Kat Dennings compliment. I'll get to my.
I didn't think she was great in the sequel. I thought she was overdone. But I thought in the first movie she was kind of just peppered in, and it was a character that made me laugh every time she showed up. Loki was great as well. I thought that the end fight with the Destroyer was a little bit anticlimactic, but I thought that this was a good entry to introduce people to the character of Thor. And I mean, for everybody who was like, this isn't who Thor is, when Ragnarok came out and was funny, rewatch this movie. This movie's funny. There's a lot of laughs, a lot of gags. And I enjoyed it. Hogan, Sif, the Warriors 3, those characters were fun, if not underserved. But I enjoyed this book. This movie was great. I enjoyed it.
I'm about to butcher this pronunciation, but Idris Elba?
Idris.
I loved him in that gatekeeper role. Is that the character's name in the source
material? He's Heimdall. Yeah, he's good in the first movie. Yeah. They don't give him a whole lot to do, but I think that
I wish there was more.
Well, you get more with him throughout the MCU, so I like the way that this kind of introduced a lot of little pieces of the MCU that show up and add seasoning to the bigger movies, and I think that probably out of the origin films, you're talking about Cap, Iron Man, Thor, this was probably the weakest of the first outings as an origin film for the big three. But I still really enjoy it, man.
Yeah, for me, first off, I got to address Kat Dennings. I'm thankful she was in this movie because every time you saw her character on screen, that was your signal, go refill your soda, to go refill your popcorn, to take that pee break. Every time she showed up, you knew you could safely get up without regret and go get your refills and then come back into the theater, and hopefully they'd be back, and like Heimdall or somebody cool would be on screen. But nonetheless, I think this is actually, for me, one of the stronger origin movies, just because even Norton's Hulk, it was still, for the most part, reality-based. Iron Man was the same way. We hadn't seen Cap yet, but it was mainly a history-based movie where, it's based on real events. This is the first one that took you out of the Earth/Midgard realm, and you really got to see the grand scope of what they were going to try to build with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because I didn't know how big they were going to go. Because at the time in the comic, John Michael Straczynski, he basically had taken, their whole realm, and it was based in Oklahoma. So I didn't know if they're going to try to do something kind of like that, because some of the screenshots and what happens in the movie is he basically does end up in Oklahoma at some point. So I didn't know how much, we were actually going to see that was, all godlike and big time. But they didn't disappoint in this. I thought they did it. My one regret I had from this movie is I wanted more of Lady Sif and the Warriors 3 and Heimdall, like you guys said. I feel like, especially the Warriors 3, they never got a chance to shine in any of the Thor trilogy. And I think having more of those guys would have been great.
Well, eventually, one of them got to be Shazam, so there's that. Yeah.
And in another movie, he jobbed out instantly, to put it in wrestling terms. But we'll get more of that some other time. Here's another one. I didn't even know. I forgot this was based on a comic book from the maker of Iron Man, Cowboys and Aliens. Did anyone actually go see Cowboys and Aliens with Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford?
Nope.
I did. It's skippable. We're going to skip it anyway. We're going to skip right to Captain America, the First Avenger. I'm going to go first on this one. I feel like this one was the weakest of the origin stories. I know a lot of people love this movie. I just watched this movie. I'm kind of bored for the most part through it. I like the casting choices and everything. But it was one of those movies they feel like they had to have the Cap origin so you can see how he got into, modern day New York, basically. But I was just kind of bored through the whole thing. I understand, the historical drama or what have you, but I just felt like before I even went and saw this movie, I'd already seen it.
I'm going to segue off of that and just say I feel like I could live without this movie. We watched it. Did we enjoy it? Sure. Was it money well spent? Okay. I think I'd learn more from it than I like to give it credit, but I could live without it.
I'm here to tell you both that you're wrong, that this movie shines in a lot of different ways. And I will admit that it has some pacing issues because basically it's not a 3-act structure. It's a 6-act structure. You get 2 3-act movies. The first act is Cap becoming Cap, right? The first movie is like there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to Cap becoming Cap. But then you can't just end it there. You have to have an adventure. Right, so then you have his friends and the Howling Commandos are stuck behind enemy lines. They help these people out, and he runs into Johann Schmidt, who's got his own thing going on, and that brings the Tesseract into play, which is the crux of the entire MCU. This movie is very important. If you were an MCU completionist, and it sucks that Red Skull had to be recast, and that what was his name? What's the Hugo Weaving? Yeah. Hugo Weaving didn't want to do any more Red Skull stuff after this because he's so great. He's so great as the Red Skull. It's pretty fantastic. You got Arnim Zola in here. And that comes to fruition again in the sequels. There's just a lot of Easter eggs peppered throughout this. And I find it to be a really well acted movie. Sebastian Stan as Bucky was good. I didn't know how good he would end up being. Peggy Carter became a character that I absolutely fell in love with in this movie. And I think that she shines in her own television series, the Agent Carter 2 miniseries on Disney Plus. Go check those out if you're a fan of her. Haley Atwell does a great job in this. Chris Evans is perfect. Tommy Lee Jones is minimal, but really good. And this movie there's nothing about this movie that I don't like. There is a little bit of a pacing dip in the middle of it, but for the most part, the action's great. The CG is minimal. The period piece drama parts are spot on. It's a fun ride. I enjoy it.
Well, you list off a lot of great points. So many great points. And that's what I feel is the downfall. Too much crammed into one movie to even pay attention to any one thing, in my opinion. It's a big detractor for me when there's that much going on and just a lot of little tidbits and not a lot of focused energy to the point where it's lost on me.
All right.
Fair enough.
I think we're past the hour mark, so I think we're going to have to cut it off at the end of 2011. So when we come back, which we'll have, we hopefully we won't wait like 15 plus episodes to revisit the movies, but we're going to have to talk about Avengers. I think there was a Ghost Rider movie hung in there. And then I think we didn't even get to Dark Knight Rises. Like pretty much anything in the thumbnail we didn't get to.
Or Iron Man 3. Yeah.
I'll have to change the thumbnail at some point. But
you've adopted the disappointment. I was born in it.
There is one movie we got to mention. This will be our last movie. I'm going back to 2010 because somehow I skipped it in the list. And it's in the thumbnail. I don't know why I forgot it. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Fantastic movie.
Yes, fantastic.
Fantastic movie. Scott Pilgrim versus the World has something for everybody. If you grew up in the mid to late 80s into the early 90s, if you like video game culture, if you're a fan of music, if you're a fan of comics, if you're a fan of just random cartoons, I showed this movie in the same week to my girlfriend who is not into comics at all. I showed it to my 15-year-old daughter in the same week, and they both had the same reaction. That was a lot of fun. I like that. Yeah, these are people who aren't super into comic book movies. I love this. I don't know if it's an adaptation that succeeds because I've never read the source material, but man, is this fun. I loved it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very solid movie that stands on its own. It kind of makes me wish Edgar Wright could have somehow made that agreement to direct Ant-Man, even though Peyton Reed did a serviceable job with the Ant-Man franchise so far. The cast is actually not too bad. It actually makes you not completely hate Michael Cera, like most people do. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I always like me some Mary Elizabeth Winstead. So definitely a movie. Once again, it's on this list of movies reviewed. It's one of the top ones worth checking out, in my opinion.
I'm gonna probably have to go back and find it and watch it then, because whenever I see a movie trailer or any information coming out, the second I see Michael Cera's name on it, it's like nails on the chalkboard. I don't go anywhere near it. Not going to spend
great
money.
in this.
So I'm going to probably have to go back and watch it based on what you guys are saying.
Do it, Andy.
Yeah. All right. So I'm probably not going to change the thumbnail, by the way. People just deal. We'll use the same thumbnail like 10 episodes from now, just minus Scott Pilgrim. But anyway.
Well, now you got me looking forward to part 3, man.
Yeah, part 3 is going to be a big one because that starts like boom, like Avengers. So we got through the middle part. We trenched our way through the mud, and now it's just a big bright spotlight from there. Unfortunately, I didn't get to use any of my Bane or Batman voices today, but we'll save that for next time. But we're going to wrap up with a little bit of an experiment. So as you guys can tell, this is a premiere video, but I don't want to muddle the voices of the chat and the people watching out there. I still want to be able to bring it back to the people and let them pick our next read. So to do that, we're going to experiment with the Comic Core community tab that we inherited once we crossed 1,000 subs. So it gives me 5 options to pick from here. We're going to schedule this post to do at 11 o'clock tonight. So if you're watching this, it's probably about 11-ish. Check our Comic Core homepage on YouTube. Check the community tab, or hopefully Drew will be nice enough to put the link down below to the community page. But anyway, we're going to give you 5 options. I've already typed in 2, and I hope these guys help me with the other 3. So the first one, we got super fan Chris Barrett out there. I like the way Chris Barrett does things in our Modern Men chat. He sticks to one read every single week until it gets picked. So he picked Daredevil Born Again 10 weeks running, and guess what? It finally won. So what I'm going to do is he has been suggesting Marvels since we read Daredevil. So Marvels, it's going on the poll. So if you guys want to see us read Marvels from Alex Ross back in 1994, I believe, all you got to do is go to the community tab and select that. But here's one I don't think I've ever seen suggested in our randomizer ever. And I have no clue why. I think it's just something we keep forgetting about. But we're going to go ahead and add it in. And that is Infinity Gauntlet. Because why have we not read Infinity Gauntlet at this point or suggested it? So I'm going to throw in Jim Starlin, George Perez, a little bit of Ron Lynn sprinkled in there. We're going to go Infinity Gauntlet. So we got 3 more options. Drew, I know you got an option up your sleeve.
Look, I'm going to throw something at you guys. Indie and fun and a little bit fluffy. Something that doesn't take a whole lot of energy to read, and that's volume 1 of Scotty Young's I Hate Fairyland. I feel like if you were a fan of Mad Magazine at all and you have not checked this out, you're doing yourself a disservice.
All right, Andy, you got one up your sleeve?
Let's segue off of that and kind of flip the spectrum a bit and say, how about V for Vendetta?
Okay.
I feel like that's probably the kind of like an opposite.
Exact opposite. I'm trying to turn my brain off. You're trying to make me think. Thanks, Andy.
Let's see. Now I feel like we got to have something for the DC fans in there.
Yeah.
So what DC book can we throw on this list? All right, I'm looking to my left to see what we got. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pick one completely out of left field. You guys may love it. You may hate it. I'm going to go ahead and say Batwoman Elegy from Greg Rucka. Exactly.
Greg Rucka. I think I'm coming down. I think my horse might be sick. Just telling you.
So if you guys don't want to see Drew next week, vote for Batwoman Elegy.
If you want to hear me shit on a Greg Rucka book, vote for Batwoman.
So yeah, just keep that in mind when you're voting. So once again, this information will be on the community page. I'm posting it to be up at 11 p.m. tonight. I'm scheduling it now. Hopefully it doesn't crash like last time. All right, it's scheduled. It's in the can. So final thoughts. Drew, what'd you think of tonight's episode?
I love tonight's episode, and I'm going to tell you why. I like hearing myself talk about Green Lantern for 60-second intervals. Beyond that, I thought Magic Order was a great read. I put it in the randomizer. I had fun reading it again. I also had fun telling you guys how much I hated the ending. So I hope that people have fun with the episode. If you didn't have fun, let me know in the comments down below. If you could let me know in 3 separate comments to help our engagement while you tell me how much fun you didn't have, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Andy, where can people find you?
You guys can find me here Monday nights, Modern Men. Occasionally you can find me on the Simpleman's Comics channel with some shows there. They started a new podcast that they're doing that's engaging the community a little bit more. You can find me on Pinky's Out Podcast where we can get together and do an episode, which we're trying to do as well. And whenever the Comic Core needs me on, or some other channel out there might want to hang out and talk some other sort of comic books, Downright Nerdy Podcast and Bored and Annoyed, we're doing a bit of rereading on Saga, and we're introducing some people that haven't read it before, and they're loving it. I really enjoyed Magic Order. This was a great time today. Looking forward to seeing what happens more with that, and more importantly, I love our movie segments that we do. I know I sit here and I'm kind of like, I didn't watch it, but what I do watch, I do see, I can engage on that, but more importantly, I learn a ton. I learn a ton from you guys, and it helps paint a broader picture of what's going on. And like, I'm going to go back and watch, Scott Pilgrim. I'm going to go back and watch some of the other stuff. So I appreciate it.
I'm glad I didn't convince you to watch Cowboys and Aliens.
You should have. What's wrong? You should take these opportunities. Yeah, every time a movie comes up that was terrible or I didn't actually see, I'm just going to like kayfabe it and just make Andy watch it.
No, I really enjoyed tonight's episode. As much flack as I give Drew, I do enjoy our like almost ESPN first take style of shooting down and complimenting movies left and right. A lot of fun tonight. I think this has been one of our most fun episodes for a long time. Not that they're not fun, but they're all great. Just watch the whole playlist of Modern Men. You'll see what we're talking about. But anyway, I guess you could find me. I'm going back tomorrow live, Tuesday night live stream, 7 p.m. Eastern. I got some turtles behind me. We'll be talking turtles. Our pal Kavi, Comic Books NYC, he showed some turtle books yesterday on his channel. Yep. He's inspired me. I want to show my turtle collection because why not? I figure that'd be a fun thing to do. And you can also find me. I made a cameo appearance on DC Daily episode 365. So someone's actually sleeping on that app. You can see me and my buddy Mike do a quiz show and win action figures. So that was fun and random. So they actually used the footage finally. So go to the DC universe. A big shout out to Joker68 for letting me know I was actually on that show because I had no idea. And then you can just find us all on here on Comic Core tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 p.m. Eastern will be Golden Guys. Wednesday is Legend, and Kat called it like Wackadoo Wednesdays, but the greatest comic show of all time. We love those guys over here. And then Friday, Comic Core Roundtable. And actually, I should have said that the poll you guys will be voting on is closing Friday at 10 p.m. So the winner of the poll will be announced on Friday's Comic Core Roundtable. So stay tuned to see what we'll be reading next Monday, or just come back Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern. We'll be live next week. Other than that, well, JB's not here to lead us out, so I'll just have to bumble my way